voice, Senator Joni Ernst, Republican of the great state of Iowa, serving on the Homeland Security Committee. That did not stop you, Senator, from leaning in and making sure the public knew the truth. Talk to me about your round with Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Harris. This is important to the American people. And I've heard from Iowans over and over again. They want to know about the origins of COVID-19 and why Dr. Fauci lied to the American people. They want to know why they were sequestered away, why they were not able to say goodbye to loved ones that were isolated in nursing homes and hospitals, why our children lost out on years of education because our schools were shut down. So we focus very much. Of course, I chair the DOJ caucus in the Senate. I watch government spending. But my line of questioning was largely focused on the taxpayer money that was funneled to the Wuhan Institute in China, as well as a veterinary institute also housed in China, and that Fauci knew very well they were experimenting at different times with gain-of-function research. Even though we saw during President Obama's administration, President Obama put an end to gain-of-function research because it was considered so dangerous to our population. Dr. Fauci knew full well what he was doing when he was sending our taxpayer dollars to China, to the Netherlands, to a research facility in Wisconsin, knowing that it would endanger our population. But then I also focused on aborted human baby parts that were also used in research funded through his efforts, whether it was at NIH, at NIAID, but it was absolutely disgusting. And I wanted the American people to know that there are researchers that are out there doing this.
Yeah, it was fascinating. You went into great detail about that. And, you know, that meant that that wouldn't have been covered by a presidential pardon. I mean, if he had wanted to say anything he could have said about that, I would imagine that would have been just fine, according to what he thinks he can do. Let's get into that, though.
Right.
So there's a vote next week, according to Senator Rand Paul, on contempt having to do with Dr. Fauci. Did you and other senators, what can you share about the conversation? Did that happen before all of these 111 pleading the fifth moments, or did you decide that during, after? How did that come about?
Yes, and I believe that through the course of the day, because of course we didn't know for certain going into that hearing whether he would plead the fifth, although many of us thought that he would. So through the course of today's questioning, obviously he invoked his Fifth Amendment rights 111 times. And then towards the end of my questioning as well, I asked that the chairman direct Dr. Fauci to answer the questions and why he thought he was covered by the Fifth Amendment, but he continued to invoke the Fifth. So we will take a look at that, explore those opportunities, but absolutely we should do everything we can to make sure that Dr. Fauci is being held accountable for his misleading the American people during the COVID-19 pandemic.
How important was it today just to get this part on the record if some of you had already anticipated that he would, you know, invoke the Fifth Amendment?
Yeah, Harris, incredibly important that we display to the American people that those that are most trusted in our federal government, and at that time it was Dr. Fauci, how someone with that power and that authority can absolutely lock down an entire country. And with him invoking and pleading the Fifth, every single time we asked a question, it will demonstrate to the American people that it is okay to question that authority. We need to make sure that we are respecting people in science, but that all opinions in science are respected, because what he did, he tamped down through various bribes, through grants, opportunities. He tamped down other scientific researchers, others that had authority authority on pandemic research. He told them basically, remain silent. I'm going to take the lead. Here's a few $million to keep quiet.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, it's just really, really awful what he did, not just to the American people, but to the United States as a whole.
Senator Joni Ernst making the case today, and now next steps. I appreciate your time. Thank you for stepping out of that and joining us here on The Focus.
Thank you, Harris.
I want to bring in Jonathan Turley, constitutional law attorney, GWU, George Washington University law professor, and Fox News contributor. Joining me now by phone. So, Jonathan, this went a different way at the very end. And you just heard Senator, I don't know if you could hear Senator Joni Ernst talking about this, but the senators had already kind of thought he would do what he did today. Maybe not 111 times. What is the final word on whether or not they can bring him in contempt?
Well, Harris, this is a bit of a murky question with regard to the impact of a presidential pardon. His attorneys are probably on good ground that the courts are likely to adopt an expansive view of the pardon in terms of its protection, but also allow him to avoid any further culpability by invoking the privilege, that the pardon would not extinguish that ability. But really, the tough moment for him came at the end when Senator Paul crafted a question that said, I'm asking you this question within the limits of the period of your pardon. Mm-hmm. Now, that was a very important framing because he's saying, I'm not asking you to say anything after the pardon where he could obviously claim privilege. I'm talking about the period for which you were pardoned. That's going to present this in the clearest way to the court. Now, it was also raised whether he might have waived his privilege because he made a long statement, or a relatively long statement, before the invocation. That's also a type of murky area. He had not been asked a question at that point. But some of the senators have said, look, this is what we went through with Lori Lerner. She tried to make a statement and then said, I invoke, and she was held in contempt. So that's going to be another issue that they raise. I think that Chairman Paul is right. These are going to have to be resolved in the courts.
Yeah, I mean, what you were talking about there only made me think one thing, and that is, did he know that also the states are the exception? You could see states coming forth now because the presidential pardon does not cover their prosecutions or investigations. Jonathan Turley, thank you very much. I appreciate you joining me on this breaking news coming out of that big hearing. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.